Hi guys, so today we'll be talking about Next's recent and rather abrupt announcement about ending the Clash of Worlds game mode and replacing it with the recent Area of Conquest or AOC here on forth, the event. And this was just after the recently concluded second runtime of the AOC event in the entirety of the Hero Wars history. Now, I'll be expressing my own opinions based on what Nexus has publicly announced and also my experiences playing on two separate accounts for this event. I'll avoid talking about the feedback going on in the Discord, which is plentiful enough as it is. You can go check that out for yourself to gauge the general reaction. So to get things started, basically a few days ago, Nexus made an announcement. You can find the community post on the link here, but basically it just said that the current season of Clash of Worlds will be its last, wrapping up October 5th. Battle doesn't end there. AOC will step out as Dominion's new primary cost server game mode later this year, so on and so forth. And they made some comments about it being a fresh strategic twist with this update, being less time consuming, so on and so forth, continue refining the game. And there's one statement here that stands out to me is that it said that your enthusiasm for this mode, reflected in recent surveys, was the key factor in making this decision. So the first problem I see here is a matter of presentation. We've only seen two iterations of the AOC event. The first one was about a few months ago, and the second one just finished like last week. And both times, it's quite clear cut to any sensible player that assuming that teams were match made properly with the equal amounts of power and equal amounts of skill when selecting their hero teams, that the people who sign online more will spend more time, staring at their computer screens or hero wars, would definitely come out on top. And naturally, there were some who would invest ungodly amounts of time in this event, as if they had no other commitments in their life other than hero wars. So this statement about enthusiasm for this mode in being reflected in recent surveys, and it sounds to me like this statement doesn't sound something that's very believable. I find it at best ignorant, or at worst, it's extremely disingenuous, or to give a bit of benefit of a doubt, it seems like a grossly misinterpreted conclusion drawn from survey data. So we'll talk more about this later in a later section. Now, as a whole, this announcement itself comes to me, it strikes me as a very poor PR move. I'm hearing a lot of promises, things like, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but we haven't seen anything concrete come out of it. And for the most part, what's based on what's been delivered so far, I speak for myself and I'll say that even though in both of my accounts I was moderately successful in getting a decent ranking, one was number 2 and the other one was number 1 in my respective guilds, I could not in good faith find this event enjoyable. Now, in addition to this, I don't recall any survey whatsoever being released to talk about this particular AOC event. Maybe I'm mistaken, but well, all I can say is that I don't recall any survey being brought up, and I think based on what most people in Discord are saying, I don't think they got any either. So whether this was a closed group survey, a smaller sample size being taken, I don't know. But what I can say with certainty is that I didn't take any survey. So a day after this announcement, within 24 hours, Nexters, in response to spirited discussions, they released yet another public announcement. This I can only view as some form of damage control or an attempt to appease the masses. But I don't think its effectiveness. I don't think its intended result came out the way that they wanted. And they claim that we're in the process of gathering your thoughts and suggestions, and we'll make sure to take in the community's input and think it over. We'll return in more details, yada yada, so on and so forth. And then they have several pointers afterwards that address the most pressing concerns of our community. Now, the first statement that they talk about was the reasoning behind this decision. There were some claims about regularly analyzing statistics, collecting community feedback, so on and so forth. Over the past 6 months, the data has shown that a large number of players are dissatisfied with the COW or are not engaged with it and spend little time participating, preferring other activities. On the other hand, Area of Conquest has caught attention, having great potential, numerous requests to bring the event back as soon as possible, some suggestions use it replace user, these two factors are key incentives, yada yada, so on and so forth. You can read that for yourself. Now, there's a few big problems with these statements. And well, to start off with, the statements in the first point, these two paragraphs here, it basically implies that COW as a game mode sees a lot less popularity compared to AOC. this is a terrible comparison. To give an analogy, in the finance world, if you're talking about, investing time and money, or just talk about money in a sense, it's like saying that investing in short-term, low risk stock options like bonds and treasury bills over a 3-month period with a maximum yield of 4% ROI, returns on investment, is going to be less popular than a 1 week sweepstakes lottery where 25% of the participants are guaranteed to walk away with cash prizes of up to $10,000 at later to no effort. And it's unconscionable, it's unfathomable. I can't even fathom how is it that you could take these two events and compare them to each other and say that one is more engaging than the other. It's apples to oranges. It's not even the same thing. You can't make this kind of comparisons. And I mean the this analogy is terrible. Not the analogy, but rather the comparison. So, well, let me try to do my own more objective breakdown on the two events based on the following traits. And this is my own analysis. So you have Clash of Worlds, which is basically hero and title oriented, and Area of Conquest is using only heroes. And for Clash of Worlds, when it comes to the general, player base, some of which are maybe in less privileged guilds or less powerful guilds, there's a chance that if you're in an imbalanced guilds where you only have like 1 or 2 whales, there are guilds that are potentially locked out before the bridge or before the bastions and gates. You can't even progress to the later half of the map, and you're just a guaranteed loss just because your titans aren't good enough. Whereas in Area of Conquest, everyone's free to move anywhere as long as they have available moves. Now, the number of attacks being used per Clash of Worlds is basically 3 heroes and 2 titans per member, whereas Area of Conquest is basically proportional to the number of members you have and the online time that they spend, because you need to be online to make your moves anyway. And now, the crux of the issue is on the rewards coming out from the Clash of Worlds. Clash of Worlds trophies are basically rewards. They're not exactly exclusively used for totems only, but basically this is the only source in the whole game mode, in the whole game, where you can get rewards specifically used for light and dark totems. The alternative to this is using emeralds, but otherwise you only can get these resources coming from Clash of Worlds. Whereas Area of Conquest rewards are basically relevant. Their recent patterns and the flags, all this are basically relevant for all hero teams, which is the name of the game is about hero wars. It's less about titans. It's more about heroes. And to say that Clash of Worlds is less popular in Area of Conquest, this is like Jesus Christ, this couldn't be more obvious. And let's do a more detailed breakdown of the rewards. So Clash of Worlds, basically a 12-week leagues, and here I've painted a very exaggerated scenario whereby it's a hypothetical scenario of the maximum theoretical payout you could get, assuming you were the number one guild in the Clash of Worlds seasons. You start the season at Duke Division 1 and you win all your fights without drawing. And in reality, most guilds at the top tier knows that this simply doesn't happen because there are more draws than there are wins at the top tiers. So, but basically, this is the maximum payout you can get from winning all your 24 fights, 2 per week, 12 weeks, so 24. And the total, including the leaderboard and the season end rewards plus the league advancements, is going to be about 8,560 Clash of Worlds trophy payouts. Now, let's look at the requirements required to level up each of the light and dark totems. Mind you, each of this is for one totem, but to go from level 1, a flat level 1 totem, all the way to 120, which is the maximum level, you're going to need about 53,000 Clash of Worlds trophies. And the equivalent emerald investment is about 208,000. It's different at different tiers. You can see that the emerald valuation per trophy, it goes up much higher at the later levels. And basically at the highest levels, if you do the math and based on the Wikipedia resources, you'll see that the maximum value of a trophy is about 7 plus, close to 8, but it's about 7 plus. And if you combine all these idealized scenarios and give a very conservative, I say conservative in advantage of making the value of the Clash of Worlds rewards as high as possible, you're going to look at about 60k emerald payout when assessing the valuation to the totem rewards. And this is 60k emeralds across 12 weeks. Or rather, you're getting back, up to a maximum of 60,000 emeralds over a 12-week investment, assuming you win everything. Now, one thing to note is that for most people in the average COW or Clash of Worlds game mode is that the people that are already competing in the top tiers of top 50 to top 100, you already have these totems maxed out. Otherwise, you wouldn't be competing at the same league. And furthermore, the intended purpose of this Clash of World trophies, aside from using trophies to level up your totems, you can probably exchange them for Gift of Dominions. And those same guilds probably don't need those rewards at all. So basically, you have this game mode that's giving rewards that are almost redundant to the people. It's going to be redundant to the people who are getting it, and for those people who need it, they won't be able to acquire it at a rate that's meaningful enough. On the other hand, you have the recent Area of Conquest events, and you're talking about threads and patterns. And I'm going to be benchmarking this against the Weaving Patterns event, which is the 3-day regular event that anyone can participate in at no additional effort and cost. This is considered basically single player engagement. And if you take up all the quests and submit all together, basically, if you don't spend any emeralds, you don't spend any VIP points, you can probably complete the rest for free, assuming you've stocked up and planned your resources accordingly. You're going to get 1,950 golden thread without emeralds, not VIP. If you're willing to spend the 60k emeralds, you get another 1,000. And if you're willing to spend VIP, which is probably not something that most people will do, you get 3,650. And if you compare this to the Area of Conquest event, and basically this is a ranking rewards, the first iteration gave out the first, second, and third ranks, they gave out the same rewards for the gold, silver, and the bronze. But the consolation prize, the first run they gave out 1,000 threads, and the second run they gave them a measly 5 hero chests, which don't even give golden threads at all. And if you look at the thread value, basically this is what it is. First place is close to 10,000 threads. Second place 8,000. Third place about 4,600, and the last place in the first run you got 1,000, and this run you got nothing. And basically what this means to say is that, assuming you were one of the guilds that didn't end up, unfortunately, in last place, you got a threat value that exceeded the potential investment of a Weaving Patterns events, including that of VIP and Emeralds spent together. And that's basically, if you were lucky enough to not place in fourth place, you could have done this free of charge at no additional investment incurred. And what this means to say is that, it's not right. It's not sensible at all to even compare Clash of Worlds with Area of Conquest. These are two different events with two different time schemes and two different rewards altogether. And to say that one is more engaging than the other and one encourages people to spend more time on it by virtue of the gameplay and by virtue of the incentives given, it's ridiculous. This is a completely illogical, insensible, a statement to make. Right, so I don't think I'm not sure what Nexus is trying to pull off by making that statement. It just simply doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And well, now let's talk about the supposed survey that they did, and this is my, I've made up a simplified example just for illustration purposes to group up, the players in Hero Wars, to group up into basically 4 demographics. Of course, I have to emphasize this is an overly simplified example, and you as a player may not necessarily fit in any of this. It's definitely it's a spectrum of people depending on how much you are, how old you are, how new you are. But basically, this are the kind of reactions that you're going to see from each of these player groups at their extreme categories. Clash of Worlds for the pay-to-win own player, it's basically you keep drawing all the way, you get 7,500 versus 7,500 points, and if you're not, and if you want to succeed, you're going to find a better guild. And their perceptions of Area Conquest is basically no game, no life. And for the second tier of people, basically you're free to play, but you're old player. You probably don't even care about Clash of Worlds. You don't care because your totem sucks, you can't even compete, and therefore you're not going to pay attention to it, and because it's not something that has very high value in terms of rewards attached to it, and you don't need to place much emphasis on it. And when it comes to Area of Conquest, basically you're at the mercy of the matchmaking. It's a luck of the draw kind of thing. It depends on who you get matched up against and who you're competing against to determine whether or not you can get a good placement for the better rewards. Now, as for the newer player categories, basically when I say newer players, I'm thinking people who have perhaps joined on newer servers. Now we're in the triple digits, I would say, I don't know, servers 200 and above. But assuming you're paid to win, if you come in, when it comes to Clash of Worlds, you're basically going to realize that not everybody in a guild is going to be paid to win, and you're going to feel that the rest of my guild sucks. I probably want to move on to this group of players eventually once I've enough development and time on my hands. But when it comes to Area of Conquest, this particular demographic of players were probably the ones that were enjoying the hell out of this event. And when I say enjoying, I'm talking about pub stomping. So for those who are not familiar with the term part stomping, it basically just describes a one-sided fight. It's a one-sided scenario where you have a group of players that are much more experienced and much more well coordinated, that are just simply dominating the whole board because no one can even compete against them. And this is a likely result of someone who's a pay-to-win player, but still in one of the newer servers. But the rest of your guild is basically imbalanced. And of course, for the last group of people, which is if you're free to play, if you're a new player, you wouldn't even know what the hell Clash of Worlds is. And if your reaction to the Area of Conquest, again, you're at the mercy of matchmaking, but you're more likely to end up facing up against, some whale that just keeps killing you over and over again. So to speak on my personal experience, on my second account, I was playing in a relatively imbalanced guild where we had players that were much weaker than us in about half the guild, but we ended up matching against a guild that perhaps had equivalent strengths. They are about equal in terms of power, but with the right heroes and the right gameplay strategy, I didn't spend a single dime. I didn't spend a single emerald on this event, but I just took an Ishmael running around, killing up all the teams with no armor and no appropriate counter. Alternatively, you can also run around with a charge Armora and a charge Polaris and basically just keep chain killing teams over and over again. I think my biggest record was like 10 or 11 kills or 12 kills in a row to get this event, but on average, for every single time I left the castle, I would return with at least 7 to 8 kills on hand. So within 3 days of basically no lifing and grinding this event, sorry, not 3 days, but a 6-day period, and at the end of the 6th day, after 3 days of actively hunting for this, I basically completed the 120 successful attacks. So what's the point here? The point is that when Nexters address their concern of the survey and the demographic, I'm left with more questions than answers because they claim that people want the event back as soon as possible, but I don't think it's because the event was enjoyable. I think it was because of the rewards. And with regard to the target group or the focus group that they're trying to address, it seems to me like they are trying to make it more attractive for a certain demographic of player rather than the generic audience out there. They're just focusing on a certain group of people that probably can feel a trivial sense or a very superficial sense of superiority from dominating in this event. Or of course, if assuming you're free to play, you just want to be in the third place. You got the third place rewards and you're happy with that. Well, that's it. Is of course you would welcome this event coming back time and over again. Now, one thing to be sure is that even if Nexters were to replace Clash of Worlds entirely with Area of Conquest, you can be damn well sure that the magnitude and the frequency of rewards aren't going to be, on this scale. I'm highly skeptical that they'll be giving out 3,000 golden threads at every single conclusion of Area of Conquest, should it even replace the Clash of Worlds. Even if they iterate it on a 2-week basis, this is too much payout at potentially no memorable investment from some of the players. So I don't think this is going to be the same rewards you're going to see even if it replaces the game mode. So the second point raised up by Nexters in their follow-up post was that player concern on AOC was that it was more time consuming. And again, here, once again, I'm seeing promises only. I don't see any concrete examples or, concrete solutions or proposals to say that, we can make it less time consuming by doing X, by doing something specific. I'm not seeing any of that here. I'm just seeing a lot of promises. Of course, to give Nexters the benefit of the doubt, perhaps they may be able to make something that works out. But to me, I think a bigger concern other than just the time investment is one thing that they did not address, and basically it's this. Boosters, health potions, and the goddamn golden ticket. You have monetization in a competitive game mode. Clear pay-to-win strategies and an obvious cash grab to get players to spend money to keep the servers alive. And none of this existed in Clash of Worlds. Once you enter the fight, you're locked in and you're basically competing at the same level as where you came in, and you're locked in, and you can't pay for extra moves, extra tries. You can't pay to upgrade your heroes on the spot. They are locked in at their powers in terms of the defenses, and it's just a matter of either team or either guild demolishing all the defenses to the best of their abilities as much as possible. And none of this exists in Clash of Worlds, and in both iterations of Area of Conquest, these things were all there. It's basically an incentive or a cash grab there. You want your players to spend money on a game, and I have a sneaking suspicion that it's not going to go away if they do replace the Clash of Worlds with AOC, and I sincerely hope I'm wrong. Now, the third point raised is on the matchmaking. And for those who weren't aware, essentially there were quite a number of cases owing to poor implementation of the event that allowed a guild to completely trivialize the intended competitive spirit of the event. So don't get me wrong. I think Area of Conquest, if done right, if you disregard some of the glaring flaws like the pay to win aspect and the time investment, if you do it right in terms of a competitive event, it does encourage intelligent gameplay. It does encourage players and guildmates to strategize, to communicate. It's the general spirit of competition to work towards a common goal with a fair playing field, so to speak. If you, of course, that's a very generous assumption if you take away all the other caveats. But the crux of the issue in this implementations of these two game modes lied in the fact that the matchmaking for a transition event like AOC was poorly done. And I don't know whether it was the same for the first because they didn't really give much updates on that, but I assume it's the same so. And basically, the matchmaking was done based on the total combined hero power of the players in a guild. So, Nexus probably ran this script before the event started, just saying that, let's list down all the guilds based on the total combined hero power, and we're going to match them into brackets of 4 accordingly, go down the list and just rinse and repeat for the whole thing. On paper, it sounds fine, right? It sounds logical. However, there was a loophole that basically somehow completely fell off Nexus' radar, and that is the fact that players can swap, join, and rejoin different guilds during the event and continue participating freely, regardless of the power discrepancy that was brought about by the initial matchmaking process. So this led to several results. Scenario A. Before the matchmaking begins, assuming you have 4 guilds lined up and the script runs and it matches 4 of these guilds together, but what one of these guilds has done is that essentially they've kicked out a portion of their members, maybe half, maybe 20, maybe 29, I don't know, like a certain portion of the members, and you're left with like maybe certain members with abnormally high powers per player matching up against guilds full of 30 or 20 plus members that have much, much less power. They have like half the power of this said person. And then what happens is that after the matchmaking begins and the event starts, they basically bring back all the players that they have temporarily left out or left in a pool somewhere. They brought them back in. And during the event that plays out for the rest of the event, you have basically a guild with a dominating powerhouse that is competing against the rest of the small fry. And this is a clear exploit. This is a clear thing that shouldn't be allowed in a naturally competitive spirit, because this is just matchmaking exploits. You're going to dominate this guild, just simply going to dominate and overrun the entire. You're going to steamroll all the rest of the competition at the event. Now, scenario B is basically that at the event start, matchmaking plays out exactly normally, exactly the way it is. And now what I have here is basically 2 illustrations of 2 brackets of guilds. One, let's say, for example, in the top 50 guilds, you have like guild number 1 to guild number 4, and they're all matching together, playing out happily in a regular competitive spirit. And then you have like a server 100 or 200 plus guild where they're like just starting out with 300k players. Oh, sorry, this is actually like a bronze guild on the same server. And basically what happens is that at the end of the event, maybe one of the guilds feels like they're not doing well. They end up last place at the 4th place at the end of the event, or maybe halfway through the event. What they did was that they basically left a placeholder account. It doesn't even have to be an original guild member. They can just bring in any placeholder account to park it in the guild to keep the guild running for Osh and Clash of Worlds, and they just move all their guild members over to the Bronze Guild, and just basically dominated the Bronze Guild bracket for the day. And this happens, it can happen anytime during the event, it can happen halfway, it can happen just before the end, it doesn't really matter. But the point is that this basically results in a overwhelming dominating advantage for this guild in the bronze tier or the lower tier guilds. And so basically, I'll give credit to Nexters for acknowledging that, the exploits and as such, all these things have happened. They are aware of it, they know it's being done. However, given that earlier competitive game modes like Guild Wars and Clash of Worlds already have safeguards or participation locks in place since for as long as I can remember, not having it for a similarly competitive game mode like the Area of Conquest for the second time running in a row, this just doesn't reflect well on the development team responsible for fine-tuning the mechanics in the game. It's as if their focus is on something other than ensuring fair competition, if you get what I mean. So even if you disregard these matchmaking loopholes and all these exploits that were done, you can even have a natural phenomenon, let's call it scenario C, whereby you have imbalanced guild, whereby you have one Goliath, one whale in a guild, and is surrounded by a rest of free-to-play players. So let's say, for example, like the average players in the guilds, second, third, fourth guilds is like maybe 300k. The median power of the guilds in the first guild is basically 100k, but you have one Goliath that's like what 1 million, 3 million power. And this guy is just going to basically dominate the central spot in the Area of Conquest event and hog all the 32-point settlements for himself. And he can just basically go around steamrolling and killing anybody he likes whenever he has free moves at any time of the day he's online. And this is a clear winning strategy. It's with this kind of matchmaking opportunity, there's simply no way for the guilds of the lower tiers to even compete against, this Goliath here. It's like you're just steamrolling all of them. So does this mean that if AOC becomes a mainstay, you're going to encourage guilds to basically lower their average power of their weaker members and find Goliaths to carry them to perpetuate this kind of circumstances? Is this exactly the kind of circumstances that Nexus is going for in terms of the gameplay, especially considering the lower powered or newer servers where you have a larger a so-called Gini coefficient in terms of the power discrepancy? Well, I don't know. I don't know what Nexus intends to do about this if they continue on the matchmaking for AOC as it is right now. And to top it off, basically, the last part isn't so much a scenario, but it's basically an illustration of how 8 guilds, assuming you have powers of arithmetic progression of powers that is in ascending order, guilds 1 to 8, and the highest power guild, basically. What I'm trying to say here is that assuming everything else is held constant, ceteris paribus, and that the guilds are of equal skill, equal time investment, they're exactly online at the same time of the day, but they can win just in terms of power and strategy, so on and so forth. Naturally, most of the time, the guild with slightly more power is going to come out on top of the guild with slightly less power. And basically, you have this scenario. You line up the guilds in first to 8th place, and you have 2 brackets, first and second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seven, 8. And what you're seeing here is that based on the rewards that were given in the event, the first place and the 5th place guilds are going to get the exact same rewards. They're going to get the gold rewards, the highest tier, close to 10,000 threads. Whereas the 4th guild is going to eat shit and take the consolation prize. When, by chance or by luck, if you had more guilds and the sample size was bigger, they could have been placed against the 5th, 6th, and 7th guild. They would have come out first and they would come out on top. So the reward scaling handled in this event and the way the matchmaking was done to fit groups into brackets of 4 is something that I think is highly questionable and something that this whole concept, this whole model was probably the main reason why people actually moved to exploit the event rather than try to play it fairly, because when such rewards are at stake, you're talking about the valuation of something that's more than a payout of the golden thread event. It's natural that people will want to exploit the event. I mean, you can't stop human nature. That's how it's going to be, and it's on Nexters to prevent this kind of things from happening by adjusting and scaling the game mode and the rewards accordingly. So I'm not sure if I covered it earlier, but basically, if we go back up to the rewards, I think just a reminder again once more that the golden thread rewards from the first placing versus the fourth placing, and you're basically looking at close to 10,000 threads, which is more than twice of the Weaving Apprentice event versus no thread at all. And this is the payout at stakes we are talking about here when it comes to the competition. So while you could accuse, the players of who did exploit this event of not paying fairly, I can fully understand why they would do such a thing. It's on Nexus to prevent this. It's less of the players, but it's more of a Nexus issue at this point in time. So in closing, Nexus went on to address the elephant in the room, which is basically the use of Titans in AOC, and basically they're reassuring players by saying that the resources for upgrading the light and dark totems, which will continue staying in the game mode, is not going to go away. And well, to me, honestly speaking, I think there are much bigger or larger problems to settle before AOC can even replace Clash of Worlds fully, let alone talk about including Titans and other relevant resources. In light of recent other game development shenanigans like Concord and Assassin's Creed Shadows, I think Nexus could certainly take a leaf out of the book and learn from someone else's PR mistakes. Focus on actual game development, like the new Osh boss. That's a good change for a start, and meaningful changes before it's too late for your player base. Right. So thanks for watching, and feel free to leave your comments below.